Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Today's guest will be Willy Daunic of 102.5 The Game. He is the play-by-play announcer for the Nashville Predators. He is also a former Commodore basketball and baseball player. This episode presented by The Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water. The Well is a coffee house with a mission to bring clean water to the world. It has helped over 30 communities across the globe have access to safe water, health, and hope. You can make an impact by visiting a Well Coffee House today. There are 4 locations in the Nashville area, which you can find in Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, and Bellevue. More information can be found at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We thank our co-presenting sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center, which is located in the Gulch. Our news today presented by Sutherland & Belk, a local injury law firm committed to helping those who've been injured in accidents. If you or someone you know has been in a wreck or other accident, reach out to Sutherland & Belk, see what your rights are. You can find their contact info online at sbinjurylaw.com. Former Vanderbilt baseball players Walker Buehler and Dansby Swanson saw their seasons come to an end on Wednesday. Of course, Swanson, the shortstop for the Braves, Buehler, a starting pitcher for the Dodgers. Buehler pitched particularly well in a loss to the Nationals, left with the lead, went 6 2/3 innings, gave up 1 run, and struck out 7. The guest line presented by Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on Boll & Branch sheets for years, and they're phenomenal. Had no idea what I was missing until I got them. They are fair trade certified, which means they're made under safe conditions by men and women, treated and paid fairly. Try them for a month. You can return them for free, but you won't want to. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy to get $50 off your first set of sheets.
Starts getting cranked up with the Predators' regular season starting. A 4-game homestand to get off and running. Predators are 2-1 so far, and another game coming up Thursday night against the Washington Capitals. So this is when it gets really busy for me, but this is when it gets a lot of fun.
You had Derek Mason on your show yesterday. A couple of things came up. Let's start with the quarterback issue. Derek made a comment at the press conference on Tuesday that I think just confused everybody regarding the quarterbacks and where he was. I mean, I believe Riley Neal is his guy. I think that much was sort of clear, but what did he clarify on your show?
Well, I don't know if he 100% clarified it, but I think the message he's trying to send is whoever is in the game as the quarterback cannot be looking over his shoulder and feeling like if I make one mistake, I'm going to get yanked. And so I think that's part of where he's coming from, but I think it's very clear that the standard, the level of play he's got to have from his quarterback has to be better. And so I think the message has been sent. And so just in me trying to read between the lines, I think he wants to create some competition. I think he said, again, interpreting a little bit of what I think he was saying was the reps are going to be a little more divided at practice. And so it just leads you to believe that I think they're just going to be more willing to say, if one guy's not getting it done, we're going to try the other guy. That's how I read it. And that's probably how it should be right now. I mean, the offense isn't clicking. You've got to consider all options. I mean, it's just got to be better. This offense has got to carry the team, in my opinion. I just don't think this defense is going to shut people down. Giving up 31 to Ole Miss is one thing, but scoring 6 is just completely unacceptable against where Ole Miss is in the spectrum of things.
Yeah, from what I understand, someone I spoke to yesterday who has some knowledge on these things, I think either said that they were splitting reps in practice 50-50 or it was about to head that way. So I do think that is an indication that it is more open. I want to get to his job security in a second, but was there anything else on your show yesterday when Derek was on that he said that was of interest?
Well, I think the urgency, he's feeling the urgency. I think he knows that his team has not played up to what he thinks they're capable of. And I think he knows that, the fan base, the people that follow Vanderbilt football expect better from them. He realizes it. The question I have really is, are they capable of better? I think that they are on offense for sure. And so that's really what you don't want, is to have the perception that you're underachieving. It's one thing to be scrappy and getting the most out of what you got, and if that means 5 wins or 6 wins, then that's acceptable. But I think everybody who's involved with the program knows they're capable of better than this. They have to be.
Well, I think there are several sort of warning signs in terms of his job stability. I'm not saying that he's going to be fired, but historically speaking, there's some things and some other things going on. I'll write about those at the site in more detail starting today and later in the week, too. I say today. I'm doing this on Wednesday. We may not air this until Wednesday afternoon or Thursday. I've not decided yet. But in any case, it's not looking good. And the thing that stands out to me is, look, Vanderbilt has always had issues with fan interest and attendance, but I don't ever remember it being this bad through the course of a season or this bad at this point in the season. Now, look, your memory blurs after a while, but they are certainly at a critical juncture with regards to fan interest.
Yes, I would say they've been in bad places before, but I take your point 100%. I mean, they're at a critical juncture. I would agree. And at the same time, one unexpected win, which is what they're going to have to get back on course here, could change a lot of things, change the perception, give you some optimism. Just looking at the schedule, starts with UNLV this weekend. They've got to make sure that they get that done. And then you look at the last 3 games, Kentucky, and then the FCS team, and then finish with Tennessee. You've got a chance maybe to have the type of finish that you had last year, but to stay in the ballpark, that's where they've got to have one of those unexpected wins against a Missouri, a South Carolina, a Florida. They've got to find a way to grab one of those. And right now, we know that the way they have played will not be good enough to win any of those games. They've got to show something better, and that's the challenge ahead.
Let me go ahead and get into the mailbag because there are several other questions that I think touch on some topics that I want to touch on. So we'll go there. The mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Do you need an insurance agent who wants to know your unique needs and circumstances and will tailor an insurance plan to fit them? Josh is your guy. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at facebook.com/JDMintonHQ. He's my agent. Give him a shot. I think you'll be pleased. Mr. Vandy says, with what you have seen so far, do you think they can still turn it around?
Well, I think as we just discussed, and I think this has been a theme for a couple of weeks now, Chris, in our conversations, is they have not hit a level that at any point in the season has you saying that's good enough to win at South Carolina, or just pick a team, beat an SEC team. They haven't hit that level, but I think we all see flashes of ability that says there's something better than what they've shown, and I think the players know it. I think the cohesiveness of the offense still is lacking. Just trying to figure out, and it sounds like it would be easy, right? And we're not coordinators, but if you got some of the players that they have, you should have better results than they do, which is, I think, one of the reasons why they're looking at the quarterback. But are they capable of turning around? I'm always a glass half full, and one great performance could change a lot of attitudes right now.
Yeah, you and I have been pretty consistent on this for a while. I think our take is basically this, that based on what we've seen, no, that doesn't look hopeful. Based on the history of the players on the team, well, of course there's some reason for optimism because you've got the big 3 and you've got some other quality players on the team. But when a season goes bad, my attention turns really towards the chemistry and cohesiveness stuff. And I'm not going to say he's lost the team. I don't think that's the case, but several people I've talked to said there's just something weird around the program that they can't put their finger on. I do think that chemistry and cohesiveness is to some degree an issue. I mean, you see some of your star players visibly displeased on the sideline. And when you've got guys who are playing to make a lot of money, sometimes that comes in conflict with the team goals. I'm not trying to call anybody out for being selfish. I don't want to be really specific there, and I don't have a lot of specifics. It's just a fact of life. That's how these things go. To me, that's the thing that I'm watching is, does this kind of blow up internally to where it gets to that point, sort of the play is irrelevant because something else has sabotaged it, or can they keep it together? No, historically speaking, I think Derek has kept it together because I think the players generally do like him. They may not always agree with everything, but they do like him and respect him as a person. And that's the thing that I'm kind of watching is I don't have evidence that like he's lost the team, but there is some kind of strange dynamic behind the scenes, it seems like. And I think that's part of it. It's just the general displeasure with the season and how that gets handled going forward, and the buy-in that they get from the players, that being the coaching staff. That's kind of a long-winded way to explain it, but that's kind of, I think, the big thing right now.
I'm coming at it from the outside. I am not around the team. I can tell you my experiences with teams is to what you're describing, which I do think is going on, is not unique to any team that is struggling. I'll give you my reference point. I played on a baseball team at Vanderbilt in 1993 that had, at the time, a record. I think it was 9 guys that were drafted. And that record stood for a long time. So we had some talent on that team. But there was, at times, an internal struggle that was going on with some of that very thing you're talking about. You've got guys that are envisioning being able to play at the next level. How are they being viewed by the people that are watching them at that next level? How is their stock rising or falling? And that, if you're not careful, can take away from how the team clicks as a group. It can become something that, I don't know if I would say divides it, but it certainly doesn't help your team chemistry overall. And my basketball coach, Eddie Fogler at Vanderbilt, would use this saying: when teams hit a crossroads, when they have not been successful, when they're struggling, he said, Dr. Death visits your locker room, right? He's hanging out outside. And the challenge for the coach and the challenge for the leadership of the players is to keep Dr. Death from coming in and killing your season, basically, right? So I think they're sort of at that point right now. They're at a crossroads, and they've got to make sure they do the right things to keep it together. And it's not easy, for sure. Plenty of seasons have sort of unraveled with all of these things that can divide a team and keep you from playing at your best.
Yeah, and the other thing is sometimes losing becomes the thing that divides you. It's sometimes like it's the chicken or the egg thing. Sometimes it's something else that causes the losing. Sometimes it's the losing, the poor play that causes the issues. I don't know what the case is, but either way, you have an issue if that seeps in.
Yes, I completely agreed.
This one from Vandy Nash, I think this is a great question, and it hits on something I want to go to once you answer this. Vandy Nash says, is there a way for Malcolm Turner to incrementally improve the football culture at Vanderbilt to get them to a competitive place in the SEC? Does he really have to blow up the culture and basically change everything about it? He adds in parentheses, facilities, coaches, fan experience, brand positioning, traditions, and expectations and accountability.
Well, I think Malcolm Turner is a key figure in all of this, and that goes without saying. And that is something we discussed on our radio show yesterday is, I think it's pretty clear that David Williams' approach, we knew over time, right? He was going to be very patient with people he believed in. And I like that about Vanderbilt. I don't, after a year, they're ready to turn their back on a coach and guy and who's the next guy. It's unbelievable to me how quickly and how impatient some of these fan bases can be. I like that Vanderbilt usually gives you time to try to work out what the issues might be as you try to grow the program. But Derek Mason, of course, is in his 6th year. So how does Malcolm Turner view things from his seat? He's new. We saw what he did with Bryce Drew. That was a pretty quick trigger. I think it shocked all of us. That would certainly not have happened under David Williams' watch. And I'm not saying it was the wrong thing necessarily, but I think everybody's curious how he is viewing the direction of the program. I've asked a lot of people, who work in different facets of marketing, promotions, athletics, what you would do about the condition of the stadium, what improvements could be made about the stadium. Would you consider the soccer stadium? All of these things. And there's no easy answer at all. It's a gigantic challenge, I think, for Malcolm Turner. So I don't know the answer, but Malcolm Turner, I think we're all curious as we try to get to know what makes him tick. And remember, he's coming from a perspective that is outside of college athletics. So it's not like you can look at his track record at X, Y, or Z school because he doesn't have it, right? He's new at this game.
Well, and there's some other dynamics in play, too, at Vanderbilt. First of all, you've got this strategic plan and the things they're coming up with. I spoke to someone yesterday who's got really good connections and believes that they've already made decisions that they've just not gone public with. There's a very small circle of people who will be privy to that information. They are in a spot it's really unprecedented at Vanderbilt, not just with the things that they're trying to do for football and other sports. There was a great article in The Athletic yesterday. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, our audience did, where Dana O'Neill talked about the culture that Malcolm Turner's brought and the changing of the guard and things over there. And one of the things mentioned was there was no strategic plan anywhere. So not even one that they could dust off and refer to and say, hey, where did we go right? Where did we go wrong? So they're in the middle of that to some degree. So you've already got a massive workload if you're Malcolm Turner. You don't have the biggest support staff over there. If you want to look at underachieving coaches, your biggest underachieving coach by far is Stephanie White. I mean, they have fallen so far below the historical performance level in women's basketball, it's not even funny. So could you have a coaching search there in the spring? Yes. Here's my point. You've already got a ton to do if you're Malcolm. You've got that maybe on your radar. I don't know what he's thinking there. I question how much workload can a guy handle because I think the football coaching search is vitally important. I think getting the right coach is more important than anything. I think that's the biggest factor in winning football games. You can have great facilities, but if you have a bad coach, it's not going to matter in a lot of ways. On the converse, you've seen James Franklin win with virtually nothing. So here's what I'm getting to. How do you factor that in if it gets to that point, given the workload that he already has?
I think you've got to factor that in. And so my thought, as you lay all that out, is if I'm Malcolm Turner, I'm not looking to make a change. I'm really rooting and trying to do everything I can to support Derek Mason and hope that he sees his way through this. But, the results will have to speak for themselves because they're going to lose the three most talented players that they have next year. And so you have to kind of look ahead. What's the outlook for next year? How are they going to be better next year? If it ends up at a certain point this year, I think those are key questions, right? Because everybody else is going to perceive that as well. So I think for sure you're rooting for Derek Mason to see it through and have success, especially while you have weapons like Pinckney, Vaughn, and Lipscomb.
Next question from Dorking: how have the demands of being a college athlete changed since you were a student?
I don't see any way that I could do what I did in playing two sports for 3 years. I just don't think I would have been able to, number one, probably have permission, but number two, just have the time to put in because teams spend so much more time with their coaches and doing, I guess, for lack of a better term, required stuff. Like if you look, the kids today, they don't go home as much as we did. I felt like we didn't get to go home that much when I was playing, but it's not even close now. It's almost like you're expected to go to summer school, and be around for a lot of the summer. That's how I perceive it. They have some rules now. Let's take basketball, where you can work individually with your coaches more in the off season. You used to not be able to do anything with your coaches once the season was over. You could do stuff with the weights coach. You could play pickup ball. You were expected to do those kind of things. But as far as anything organized, you couldn't do it. And I just think that overall, the programs across the country just demand more and are trying to squeeze more out of the athletes. The pressure to win, what they pay the coaches has changed a lot. And so what they ask of the kids in turn is more. That's how I would answer it. And I think it's probably evolved that way from before I played. I think probably the 20 years before I played, they probably were asking less of what they were asking us to do. And it seemed like a lot for us. You see what I'm saying? To me, you chase it back to the more that the money is out there and the pressure to win for the coaches, the more they try to find ways to get the absolute most out of the athletes. And that's a good thing, but it's also a tough thing.
Well, and not just that, but the scrutiny and the pressure on athletes is way greater than it was. Like when you played, all the games weren't on TV. Twitter was 20-something years from being invented, that sort of thing. So you have that dynamic, too, that in addition to all the demands, which are greater, you've got that factor, too, to where it's harder due to the spotlight. That's hard on anybody, much less when you're 18 to 22.
Right. And I'm not saying it's all bad either. I think the support that the athletes get is more intricate. I think, in terms of maybe the schedule. For example, we didn't have lights at the baseball field. We had, at times, if we had a 3:30 game or a 4 o'clock game, wherever the game started, you got a class from 1 to 2. If you wanted to take batting practice, you had to skip class. I mean, that's because we didn't have lights. We didn't have the opportunity to go play a night game during the week. So you were kind of you had to fend for yourself. You had, good academic support system, but I don't think it was quite as detailed as what is available to the kids today. So I think a lot of it evolves in a good way. So I'm not saying it's bad, but I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword when you get down to it. There's probably a little bit there's probably more structure now. So for some kids, I think they really benefit from the structure. I think I could have benefited from the structure. Me trying to do 2 sports, it was really up to me to figure out how to divide my time, and that was not always easy. Whereas I think if I had had a little bit more somebody regimenting my schedule, like I think is more available to the players today, then I might have benefited from that. And also balancing, academic work with that. So I figured it out. I did the best I could. And so I do think about that a lot. But it is definitely different now, a generation later.
Got a quick Preds question from BuzzMade before I let you go, Willie. He says, Pekka is 2-0, Soros is 0-1. Does this portend that Pekka will get the vast majority of starts in the net this season?
I don't think so. Pekka has played 2 excellent games, and both have been wins. UC Soros did not play his best game on Saturday, but we're talking about an extremely small amount of games here. I think we know. I think the plan has not changed one iota. Pekka is going to turn 37 years old in November. I think they are very conscious that if they want to win the Stanley Cup, they've got to make sure they manage his starts. And so I think the number is right around 50. That's my guess. Nobody's told me that, but I think he will start in the neighborhood of 50 games, and UC Soros will increase his starts into that 30-32 range. Every year, if you look at the last 3 years, the trend has Rinne coming down a little bit in his workload and Soros coming up. And so they have the utmost confidence in UC Soros as a goalie in the NHL. He is fantastic in terms of his talent. Did not play great the other night. He had a little bit of a slow start last year too, and it always seems like he has a small patch of games, usually early in the season, where people say, well, what's going on with UC Soros? And then by the end of the year, the numbers are there. And I expect the numbers to be there at the end of this season for sure.
Willie, thank you so much for joining us in the midst of your busy schedule. Tell people where they can find you on social media, and tell people about your show on 102.5 The Game and, of course, the Preds broadcasts that you do.
Well, the next Preds broadcast is Thursday night against the Washington Capitals. Great team. Alex Ovechkin and company will have the broadcast on Fox Sports Tennessee at 7 o'clock. And then it's off on the road for a road trip at L.A., at Vegas, and at Arizona. So we're heading out west. All those games will be on Fox Sports Tennessee. The radio show on 102.5 The Game, ESPN Radio, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. weekdays. And you can find me on Twitter at WillieD1025.
Thank you so much, Willie.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
He's Willy Daunic. I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll have more episodes coming your way soon.